Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here, Basketball Rewind. I am joined with here by Beyond. Beyond the locker room, coach is missing in action, but he will be here in the future. He hasn't gone anywhere. He's just taking a break, really. But, yeah. So, what can I say? It is now more or less the second round as we're filming this. There is one matchup that is yet to kind of clear itself up, so we can kind of get into predictions with that soon. But basically all of the second round matchups are set. And overall, I think we didn't do too bad in terms of predictions. We won't get into all of them because coach isn't here and I can't remember all of his predictions. But yeah, so let's go through it. So I'm just going to name off all of the matchups that are still ready to take off soon, and then we'll kind of go from west to east. So first things first, the Western Conference Finals. The OKC Thunder have been patiently waiting for the Nuggets. And they are ready to roll, and they've been practicing and game planning every single day. But you know what they say, everyone has a plan till they get hit in the mouth. So we will see how that goes. We will get into that in just a second. But yeah, Timberwolves versus whoever it is that comes out of the Rockets versus Golden State. Now we can talk about both matchups in just a second. I have a feeling of how who they're going to end up facing, but we can definitely talk about that in just a second. Now, in terms of the East, really simple. The Cavaliers versus the Pacers. Those both took care of business very easily. Pacers took a little bit extra of a game, one game more, five, and then it was Cleveland. Took it in four. I think I said Cavs in like five. I don't think I guessed any sweeps, but it was like
Yeah. I think, yeah,
really,
we think we all had all of them. In some ways, there was no sweeps we had for any of them.
yeah,
I think we even gave Memphis a game.
yes,
Yeah, and it was going to be on their way to get that one game.
they were close.
Unfortunate events happened. It was like, oh, well, there goes that.
Now, one of the more, I don't want to say evenly, but what like this is probably, instead of it being like a rock paper scissors where there's definitive exploits. I think these two teams in the final matchup are actually fairly evenly and similarly constructed, which would be the Boston Celtics versus the Celtics. Of course, Boston Celtics versus the New York Knicks. One of the things about that, which is interesting to me, before we go back to the West, is this. When we start off the year, that was supposed to be the Eastern Conference Finals in terms of in people's minds where people thought it was going to go. So it's interesting to see they are going to get that matchup a little bit earlier than I guess what they thought. So yeah, let's just talk about the Thunder. Let's talk about how they are going to be facing the Nuggets, and I do have some of the stats up here. Ready to roll here. So let's just get right into it right now. So, of course, the interesting thing is that I believe these are just purely playoff stats, but Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, we knew that he was gonna like figure it out, but he's coming in averaging 27 points versus Jokic's 24. I know it's not all about points, rebounds, and assists, but OKC Thunder is beating Denver in terms of the rebounds as well as moving the ball. The statistical measure for everything other than points per game is fairly similar. With the OKC being able to put up 120 shellackings on everyone. And the Denver Nuggets are a little bit, for all of the ball movement that they have with the Mr. Triple Double, they have played at a slower pace, let's say. Um, yeah, I don't know where you want to go from there. I have thoughts. We'll get to the winner, but yeah, your thoughts on this matchup.
What's the old phrase in this case here? I don't know if it's a science term or whatever, but it's the immovable object versus the unstoppable force. Is that, right? Is here's the moment, right? We were, it's kind of like like a boxing match where folks have been kind of sizing each other up, for the season. The first few rounds, they're kind of just taking a few jabs and figuring things out. Well, now there's no more figuring out. Here we go. And it looked like it was a possibility last year's a Western Conference Finals preview. It didn't come to pass. But we are here now, similar to your Boston, New York scenario. We are here. Maybe some thought at the beginning of the season a little sooner than we thought, but we're here. And I think this is going to be fascinating to figure out how much have they bolstered the front court from an OKC perspective? Because boy, they got the ultimate test. So, so we're gonna find out. And on the other side of things, it's a bit of like Denver's kryptonite. Well, Denver doesn't really have a lot of wing defenders. Well, they got the ultimate test. Like when you look at there, like MPJ in this case here, that bat better be good, and whoever else is out there,
Yes.
Washington or whoever else is going to throw out there, like Brown, like good luck to you, fellas.
What is it? The meme with the bird just going like
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
He might want to do that a little bit.
In a way, they're kind of the inverse of each other, and
Yeah.
they say styles make fights. And I am looking forward to seeing how this one plays out. I found that the times I've watched them this year against each other, Chet has been very aggressive. I think he will have to be very aggressive.
Mhm.
And I think for you and the other Chet fans out there, I think if there's ever a time for the coming out party. I hope he's got the tux ready to go because this is the time for the coming out party.
Now, I do want to point out that Chet right now has 2.8 blocks, almost 3 blocks a game at this point of in terms of the playoffs, averaging 18.5 points per game. And of course, he's shooting 45% from the field. Not really worried about the free throw numbers as that's above 85%. But most importantly, he's actually shooting on 6 attempts a game, which is kind of crazy. 42% from three. So I mean, he can get it in a number of ways. That's basically half of his attempts are coming from deep, but he shoots it well enough to do that.
Yeah. I mean, like, I guess what I'm saying is like, as fantastic as those numbers are, he's
Yeah.
going to need to give more. He's got to be at over 20 a game in this series, in my mind, for them to do what they expect to do. Because I don't know. I don't know if they use the Shaq term, the others in this case here. And when I say the others, I'm talking about everybody. It's not SGA or Williams, or I'm sorry,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly. So I'm talking the Carusos, the Dorts,
yep.
the Case and Wallaces. Those dudes may, as you always find in these series as they get a little more, get closer to the finish line. The others in this case tend to be a little, the value of the others tend to shrink because what, the competition gets better, and how much can they actually, how much can they apply? I don't know if they're going to apply as much. This series is obviously playing against Memphis. That's where you need your stars to come up and say, okay, we will take the heavier load. And this, for Chet, he has to do so for two reasons. One, because of that purpose, but two, he's got to put pressure on Jokic, man. Like, Jokic can't be out there floating around and getting like chances to rest on defense at no time. At no time. So be it if it's SGA's penetration or it's Chet putting pressure on him, be it off the bounce, or even in some scenarios where you could get post up and use his length. Wherever the case may be, like he's got to find ways to put pressure on Jokic from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, those are great points. I think one of the things that I'm looking at right now is the minutes that the Denver Nuggets played coming out of a 7-game series versus OKC and their minutes coming out of a 4-game series. Now, the average, if I'm looking at number one, Mr. Murray. Murray averaged 42.1 points a game, which is more than the amount of points that are allotted in an actual basketball game, and that is because they had certain overtime games in that last series. Very, very close series, of course. By comparison, I mean, you look at the OKC Thunder. I just lost it just here, but when I was looking at it, it was, I have it here. It was closer to 35 minutes was the most. But most of those guys are playing maybe 30, 29 minutes. So right. You have a young team with fresh legs that is ready to go and ready to prove themselves. I do think that is going to be a major factor to see, and Jokic is another example where he averaged 40 minutes a game. It at some point you can't keep doing that to yourself as an old team and hope to like eke it out. They just went through a war and a half, with where they were before. And I know you say like, who's the third guy? I mean, Aaron Gordon, can he average 20 points again? Because he currently did not. He averaged 18.9, and that, so to me, I think the worst case scenario, if I know everyone's looking at Chet, I know Williams is going to show up. If Chet can at least match Aaron Gordon's offensive output, which I definitely think he can, then I think that you're fine there, right?
Right. And I
Um,
think, yeah, and I think the way, if I'm coming from the OKC perspective, say, okay, say the same numbers Chet gave in the first round, he gives that or a little less in the second round. And they might still be fine because of the other side of the ball. Because, like, to your point, Murray's the key for Denver. And if
yes,
Murray's not giving them 24, 25 a night,
then it's
then
a wrap.
like, where do you find the offense in this case, especially on Michael Porter Jr., who seems to be laboring? You
Yeah.
know, they've been getting it by committee essentially for that third scorer. It's been Gordon sometimes, it's been Brown sometimes.
Sometimes Westbrook as well, but like
Westbrook,
even Westbrook, like Westbrook really should be running that second unit, and like him and Jokic together for too many minutes, the spacing kind of gets a little cramped.
yeah. And I think the thing is that what OKC's done this year, that that they built, this is what they did use free agency for and the trade for, is that they have multiple defenders to deal with Murray. So they have Dort, they have Caruso, and they'll have Wallace. So they have three guys there that will be putting fresh bodies, to your point, on Murray at all times. And Murray has shown he can break down. So that's to me, that's my focal point from the other side. Things is like, can they contain Murray? Because if they can contain Murray, then they're gonna be on their way to the Western Conference Finals, in my mind.
So people will obviously figure out where I'm leaning, but to me, it's Case and Wallace, right? A lot of people had doubts that he could let call it contain or at least slow down Kyrie Irving. I thought he did a pretty good job of that last year. I mean, I think as a rookie, and I think now you can put him, Dort, Alex Caruso, any one of those three. That's a lot to deal with for really any guard slash wing, because some of them can, if needed, guard wings. I wouldn't put it for a long period of time, but I don't even think that guarding wings is really a problem in this series for that team. So I'm going. Obviously I'm going with OKC, but I do not think that they're going to sweep the Denver Nuggets. But yeah, like, is there anything from before we go into predictions, that you think that I'm missing here? Am I giving OKC too much credit?
Um, I think with Denver, is always the quote, the quote, heart of a champion type of stuff, which is always a
Right.
factor that you have to consider. But I think I'm like with you. I think there's just there. That's why I thought the Clippers was a more dangerous matchup for OKC
I
than
agree.
Denver, because like
Yes.
Denver doesn't have a lot of arrows in the in the quiver. Like they really don't. I
They're
mean,
also not defending over the course of this year. They have not defended well enough
no,
for me to believe in them.
no.
Um, I just
So,
like as I said, you have to come into the playoffs being like essentially like top 10 defense and a top 10 offense, and they were closer to like 18th on defense. So
yeah, I mean, like
plus the new coach, plus the new
yeah,
coach.
I suspect, yeah, I expect Daniel's going to play homegrown with a lot of second units where Jokic is off the floor, which is not going to be long. But if they make hay off of those second units with Holmgren as the focal point, they I could see some of these scenarios where it's a game that's a 6 point game also and turns to like a 15 point game. He's like, oh, what happened? Because
So,
like,
so sorry, I just got it wrong. Denver is actually 20. They ended the year 22nd overall on defense.
mhm. Because like we can bring DeAndre Jordan off the bench and deal with that. It's just there's just not a lot of options out there, man.
Not,
Like for Denver.
not this year. Maybe he's got to get back in the chamber somehow, and come out a rejuvenated man. For that to be a significant difference. Who's the X factor for both teams?
X factor for Denver, Westbrook.
Hmm.
For OKC, X factor is, I would say, honestly, your man Lou Dort.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if Lou Dort can find ways to contain Murray in some ways, which I assume he'll get the assignment initially, I think that matchup's key for them.
I'm surprised you didn't say Case and sorry, not Case and Wallace, but Caruso, because Caruso was pretty special in that. I think the last game or the second last game, during the 28. It was the second last game. Yeah, he was pretty special there.
Yeah, I mean
Where
Caruso's obviously played big minutes in the championship there for the Lakers, and he's got experience. I think I just expect that from Caruso, and I'm not saying to me. I don't think at this point he's an X factor. So I know
Right.
I'm gonna get from
Okay.
Caruso. Yeah, I think Dort is the guy. Like where if he comes up with some big games on both ends of the court, where he's knocking down threes all of a sudden in one game, he's done that before too. He's hit
Right.
some 25-point games. He's the guy in me. Like he could really swing the pendulum on how this series goes.
So where are you going in terms of I mean we both lean towards OKC from the sounds of it, but where like how many games, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Um, honestly, I think you know what it's going to be disrespectful probably, but based on more I think about, it, I think OKC in five. I know.
I don't even know the latest what is it, the whatever this Lakers of five kind of a
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean I want it. I'll be respectful here, and I will say OKC in six. But I think it very well could be a 5 game series, um, because there's just the way that I view playoffs is always like chess. I used to play chess as a young person, and still sometimes do now. And I think if you have more pieces at your availability that you could put on the board, which OKC does, even just from a defensive standpoint, and even from like just a scheme standpoint in terms of their defense. Like it's hard to go against that. I do think that, as you said, heart of a champion. I think Denver has enough pride to eke out 2 games, but I just don't see them making it past that. And I think OKC coming back, even though it was a tough game and very emotional, coming back from that crazy, the crazy comeback that they had, that early on in the playoffs galvanizes a team, and it makes you feel like you can do anything. And I think that they just have more confidence coming into this one. So yeah. All right, so we move over to the next one, which is TBD. So we will focus on the Wolves for starters. Anthony Edwards did not have a coming out party because we know that he can show up. Now, I will say, I'm sorry, Ant. I let this man here talk me out of believing in you. But and also Randall didn't do
First
too
thing,
bad.
my issue was not Ant. It's not I didn't believe in
True.
Ant. It
I
just
mean, overall,
it
I
was the
guess,
other
yeah.
guys in this case I had questions about. I was like,
Yeah,
yeah.
fair enough, fair enough. But yeah, I mean, you will actually have first of all, shout out to Nikhil Alexander Walker, the cousin of Shea. But also even beyond that, Julius Randle's coming in, averaging 22 points, per game. The fact is that Minnesota, I think, took care of business a little bit earlier than the other teams, obviously, which gives them a little bit of an edge, in my opinion, for sure. Because they're going to be able to game plan a bit more coming into this one. But they didn't have an easy series in some ways. It was, it started off, where they were like, okay, they punched him hard, and then they got hit back, and but ultimately they took care of business. So that's kind of, I guess, a good place to start. In terms of reviewing that series, they did end up winning in 5 games. So it's not like it was the hardest series either, but even still, the Lakers could have probably won an additional one and made it at least 6. Um, Not here to talk about the Lakers. This isn't ESPN. We don't get paid per minute, but to talk about teams that are now, gone fishing. So, your thoughts on Minnesota first before we get to their potential matchups, because I do think that Jaden McDaniels also stepped up in a big way, and in some ways was allowed to step up in a big way too. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's I'm not sure. Like, I'll just say this: he's the X factor for Minnesota in my mind. Like,
Hmm.
so so I'll make it clear. Like, I think my thing I mentioned in this case, my critique in this case when I was discussing the previous series with Randall is not that Randall in this case is not going to get numbers. Randall will get numbers. The question is Randall's judgment is always a bit questionable, and
Right.
he was able to hold it in just well enough. Yeah, a few moments where it's like, ooh, the ride was getting a little scary, but he held on. And that's the thing. He held on, and I think, and my only thing with Ant that had me a little frustrated in game one is like he has these moments in a series where he ends up being like a spectator, and you
Right.
could go literally like quarters without hearing his name. And he's too good a player to be. His name should be involved in like every second play. Like is like I'll go like almost chunks of quarters and not hear his name get called. That's how I was in game one and definitely in game two. And I think why I like is that he started realizing like, listen, enough of the 3-point shot. He started attacking, and he started making plays when he attacked. I think he's a better playmaker than people give him credit for. I think that will come into a lot of benefit when he plays whichever team he plays in this next series. But I think if they get Golden State, the matchups are more favorable for him in that series versus he plays Houston. Even though I know in this case here, Golden State won the season series, I do think there's opportunities for Minnesota to take advantage of certain matchups they probably didn't take advantage of more in the regular season. And also too, sometimes you gotta be careful with these head-to-head matchups because it also depends on what time of the season they played. And if you watch Minnesota the first 30 games of the season, if they played 3 games at that time, yeah, pretty much we know in this case here, Minnesota wasn't looking that great at that point. So sometimes you gotta watch when it happens and when the teams play. But I would say I like them a bet. I like their matchup a bit more with Golden State than Houston. I do think they could beat both of them, but I think it will be a much tougher series against Houston.
Yeah, I mean, here's the interesting thing. I'm looking at the stats right now, and funny enough, Anthony Edwards took more threes as the series went on. This is
Really,
Yes, so he started 9, went down to 8, then came back up to 10, 10, and 11. With the
I
last game, him making 0 for 11, but still, getting the
that's
job
true.
done.
That's why he had the 0 for 11. But I think what creates the opportunity.
Mm,
It's I think it's a reverse psychology. I think guys get caught up with the 3-point shot. I
mhm.
think people think the 3-point shot has to be off of set plays where you're just shooting the three or you're just pulling up. And I don't think they realize in this case, you being aggressive. This is what Curry gets on these guys that you don't get. When you be aggressive in this case, it opens you up for the three because they got to play you for the bounce.
Yeah.
And I think, so then when you're on the 3-point line, there's so much worried about you, but that first step, you have space now to shoot the three. Instead, what you see a lot of times, guys start shooting the three up front and not even giving themselves a chance to try to attack.
Yeah, it's in a way, it's almost like they feel their way into the game.
Right, right.
And to your point, yeah, like I don't mind. Is it sometimes if depending on the player, it's not about volume, right? But it's about where it comes, when it comes. Like a really good three at certain times can just break the back of an opponent. It's just as simple as that.
Yeah.
Obviously he still had moments like I think in the fourth game, if I'm not mistaken, where he got to the line over 14 times, 17 times actually.
Right. And that's what I'm saying. It
Like
gets into a
that's the
rhythm,
thing where it's like okay,
right?
and where you can kind of control the game in many ways. So from that standpoint, I thought it was pretty good. There's not much more in terms of that team that I want to really talk about. I do think Rudy had a really good game, but you're not expecting him to do that on a regular basis.
I will say this though, Rudy, and I think, and I'll give props to Shaq on this one.
Mm.
They sometimes really, and when we saw it early in the season, we made fun of it at one time. I think it was a Raptors game. Actually, it was a Raptors
It
game.
was a route. You mean where you asked for the ball
Yeah,
inside,
and
and
Randall just
then
pretty
Randall
much
was
just
like, "No,"
ignored him, right? And
and then
like
he got a 3 second call on purpose.
exactly right. That
Yeah,
that scenario was what was going on early in the season, and it's a perfect example of like, listen, he's not going to be some offensive wonder. He's going to next come like Hakeem Olajuwon or like that. But at least if he's got like a guy at 6'6" on him, I think he's capable enough to go and get a layup or a dunk from those guys. So I think
sometimes.
yeah, they,
He has moments. I'll say that. But
I
there's a
think
lot of times where I mean, he's gotten better at it. But there's a lot of times where even the way that he catches the ball is just like, dude, you're 7 foot and you have this much wingspan and all this type of stuff. Like, just keep the ball up. Why are you bringing it down?
fair enough. He has some frustrating moments, but I thought like he's been fantastic the last couple of years in closeout games.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I think he's got to get his due. I mean, his defense, a lot of times on a lot of perimeter players, I mean, everyone goes back to the Luca 3 last season, but he played Luca in those same mismatches this year quite well.
Yeah. Yeah. He did. I mean, it's. I know that they tried to like get him. Which is it's an interesting theory because I guess if you're trying to get him out of the game and you're trying to force a switch into Nas and then to wear Nas down because you're the same size as Nas. But if you can't get him out of the game, then I mean, you're not playing. It's not as advantageous of a matchup as people think, and that I'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
Um,
you need the right type of player that has enough burst to get past him, therefore to collapse the defense. Then you get all the swing, swing, swing three. That's what you want, which happened in the Clippers series a few years ago when he got ran out the gym because it
right.
was like they had guys that could break him off the dribble, and then all of a sudden he's now everyone's now rotating, trying to find. That's what they're looking for. But in this case, the Lakers don't have that type of they'll have those type of like one-on-one players. They're more KG type of players. So it's not the same type of like just raw athleticism, I'm just gonna blow by you type of thing. And that says if Rudy can keep his feet right, he's gonna be okay.
Yeah. So the next, out of the two, the Golden State Warriors are interesting because obviously Jimmy Butler can do a little bit of covering on Anthony Edwards. I do wonder if he is like how the tailbone or whatever,
He looks like he's falling apart as the series goes on.
Yeah, so that's why I'm like, I don't know how he's feeling, but if he's up to it, I mean, I think that they are an interesting matchup. But I agree with you. I picked the Rockets to make it through that series, and in my opinion, there's a difference between Jimmy Butler at this age. I know he's like the ultimate 16 game player, but there's also like Amin Thompson just hounding you, and
Mhm.
just like and is just excited to establish himself
Well,
in
yeah, I
many
mean,
ways.
and I will give props to some other guys out there. I mean, Tari Easy ain't making life any easier for you
No,
too.
he is not. He's another. There's a lot of wings on that team that I really
Yes,
like.
yeah, exactly. I mean, to be fair, I think Green has been getting after it as well too. Like, because all the
Hmm.
others that Green would be playing, they ain't really getting off really. You know,
Now,
the
here's the secret weapon, and here's why I think that they'll beat the Warriors, and here's why I think that they haven't. They can play certain advantages that the other team would have had to a standstill, and that's Steven Adams. I think Adams has been incredible. I said it before. I said it in my analysis. I said the way that he rebounds, the way that he's literally like a physical fortress in many ways is just it's incredible and it's unmatched. And I think that he will give Rudy a run for his money for sure. I mean, he allows them to have a Fred VanVleet and make it work because Fred VanVleet can chuck up shots and they can still tap out rebounds.
well, yeah, and I think I mean when we started this, I said like Steven Adams is the key as well too because he's
Mm,
probably the most experienced player in the playoffs. Period. That's
that
dealt
too.
with Draymond Green, Steph Curry pick and roll.
Yes.
Nobody's probably played that more than him.
Yes. Now, if they face them, I think that they have a little bit more, just from a few different standpoints. I think their coach is a little bit more experienced, considering that Finch became a head coach before Ime's second stint, if I'm not mistaken. But at the same time, Ime has gone to the finals, if I'm not mistaken.
Mhm.
So I give the coaching edge to Ime, but I also think that there's just more. Again, the chess piece analogy. There's more chess pieces that they have to throw at them. Now, the other interesting thing here is I think just in terms of compared to the Wolves, which I believe were I'm not looking at the exactly right now, but I think that they were eighth offensively, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm not looking at it right now, but I think they were eighth offensively and like sixth. I think overall, Houston is going to be worse. They're 13th offensively, but their defense is top four.
Mhm.
And so it'll be a sparring match either way. Um, it's almost too close to call, but I do want to lean towards the Rockets because I think that they have more guys that can punch up. If you're looking at like this, if things regress to the mean, you probably go with Minnesota. If there's more volatility in terms of people's performances, they have more guys on Houston that can just go off for a game randomly, like a Fred can go off for a game randomly, and go from there. So yeah, what are you calling it?
Um, okay, I'll make if for both teams, I like Timberwolves in six against the Warriors. I like the experience. Both of them have experience, but I like the Timberwolves. I like Timberwolves in six in both series for different reasons. I think Curry could win you a game, so that's the reason why I have six in this case. I think Jimmy could win them a game. And I think Houston's overall team is deep enough to get them 2 games as well too. But I think Minnesota wins against either.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Houston. I want to go with Minnesota mainly because Mr. Ant-Man has been past year before actually, But at the end of the day, I gotta go with the team that has more chess pieces with this specific matchup. Moving over to the East, the Eastern Conference Finals, Eastern Conference, I guess semifinals, we'll say, where you're gonna have the Cavs versus the Pacers. This is a little bit. This is a tough series to actually match. I do think that Cavs, just on paper, are a better team than the Pacers. They're more well built. They had a better season. They were number one in offense. I do think, interestingly enough, the Pacers, as I'm pulling up their numbers right now, they were top 10 on offense, but 13th on defense. So I would have to go with the Cavs, who were 8th on defense. That's just my raw analysis. I think a lot of people were worried about Mitchell. He showed up.
Yeah. I'll just say my X factor here for the Pacers is going to be can Pascal win the matchup against Mobley? That's what comes down to have this series be competitive. And if he's played against Mobley pretty well in his Raptors history for the most part. But in the end, and then the other thing is, I guess the X factor is pacing. Can Garland and the Cleveland guards control the pace well enough that they're not going to track meet with Indiana, and be able to use their bigs? Because I what they don't want is Jarrett Allen being kind of eliminated from the series due to pace. So that's kind of my 2 X factors. I think the series is going to go long, so I'm going to say Cleveland 7. I think this is going to be a long series. I don't think, I don't think Cleveland. They destroyed Miami. I don't know if there's a fear factor at Cleveland that people feel intimidated by Cleveland just yet.
You know what? I think it's going to be a 7-game series. My gut wants to go with Pascal and the Pacers, but I think Cleveland. Mobley has showed up, and I think I have to go with Cleveland. I agree. I do agree also that it will be a 7-game series. I think that the Pacers are a tough cookie for any team to figure out, but just the metrics, the numbers, the on-court play, the amount of guys that they can throw at guys, the fact that they made a much better trade day definition, or trade day transaction, I should say, with DeAndre Daniels. I kind of have to go with Cleveland.
Hunter, you mean?
Sorry, Hunter. Sorry, DeAndre Daniels is not in the NBA right now, but yeah, DeAndre Hunter. I think that's where I'm going. Now we go on to the final matchup, which is the most interesting.
The champs are here.
The champs are here. Now, I got to go with Boston. I'm just going to say right off rip. We'll do this one a little faster here, but I got to go with Boston for
the call, to be honest with you.
It's going to go 7 games, in my opinion.
You think it's going to go that long?
Okay. Yeah, you know what? No. Okay, let me think about it.
Okay, fair enough. If that's your plot.
No. 6 games. Boston.
I think this is going 5 Boston. I don't think this is I don't think that. I think some of these games are going to be competitive.
Here's the thing. Here's an X factor for me. Can Brunson get it to Cat enough? I know everyone complains about Cat, but you got to distribute the ball appropriately, and Cat has to be part of this to give them a chance. Because otherwise,
my father saw we're saying thank you.
Yes, because otherwise you're gonna have a guy like KP. Yes. I mean, you have to put KP in rotation. You have to put KP where he's having to defend the drives, and Cat is a force when you have to defend him in those actions, and that's just your best chance. The thing is though, the Pistons struggled where the Pistons made them struggle. The Knicks, that is, a little bit more than they probably should have. And just ultimately, I mean, Boston is top 2 on offense, top 5 on defense. They came into the playoffs a lot healthier than the Knicks, who were top 5 on offense, but top 14 on defense. You got to give it to the champs this one. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah, I think it's they're just deeper. They're just a bit better offensively and a bit better defensively, and they shoot the 3 just a bit better than them as well too. I think
per game, I'm looking right now. Boston played 14 players versus the Knicks playing 9, And really, you could probably say they played seven because I mean,
That's a stretch.
Campaign and Landry Shamet each played like
Damn it,
5 minutes
played that
and nine.
series.
Yes,
I don't understand the campaign thing. I don't get that one bit. I mean, the dude literally helped them win game one. And
yeah.
the guy, and what he gets for that, in this case, he gets benched for the rest of the series. I mean, like, don't even start. But I mean, I said before, I'm no Knicks fan, but just going to the resident Knicks fans in my family. I mean, he's got that coach of the chopping block, man. You know his business. He's had enough.
Yes. Also, I know OG had a really phenomenal a couple games, but at the same time, he also had a couple games that no one talked about. And this is my issue with OG, where he was 3 of 13 one of those games, and no one said nothing, right? But then the next game, he comes out, and it's just like, okay, whoa. What about that game? You're gonna give this guy flack, you're gonna give Cat flack, you're gonna give Brunson flack for not distributing, but OG though, OG 3 of 13. So
So
which
what we need to get OG's publicist. We need that in our lives, man.
you got
Imagine
that
that
right,
you
man.
just do your 9 to 5, and then when you do something real well in this case, like man, you're the best in the world, and then next thing you know, you miss a deadline. It's like, don't worry about it.
Yes.
I need that in my life, like OG for anything in life.
Yes. So yeah, I guess that's my thought. So yeah, I guess we will see what happens. Obviously, we're dependent on a series that's going to come out later. I'm going to try to get this out as quickly as possible. So like, comment, and subscribe, people. And that's about it. That's been not a draft talk, but other things. You will have draft talks coming out. Just filmed Ryan Cockbrenner. We're going to try to do Colin Murray
I gotta
Boyle.
be careful with that last name.
Hey, I'm just going with what the announcers said. So yes, and yeah, Creighton's finest, Blue Jay, of course. So Blue Jay, maybe he ends up as a Raptor.
Boy, I
With
wonder
that,
who the guest was on that one. I wonder who.
yes. With that being said, it's been fun. Stay well, people. Get outside, and peace.